I still remember the day I got my first tech job offer. I was sitting in a noisy coffee shop with my laptop open, nervously refreshing my email every few minutes. When the subject line popped up, "Offer letter from Monolith Software," my hands trembled as I clicked it open. The salary was more than anyone in my family had ever made, the benefits were practically luxurious, and the company name had just enough clout to make me feel like I'd made it. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, exhaling like I'd been holding my breath for the past 3 years of college. This was it. I was finally part of the future, part of tech. The first few weeks at the company felt like I was living in a LinkedIn post, free cold brew on tap, coworkers in hoodies and Allbirds who talked about React hooks like they were sacred texts, a Slack channel for everything, from board games to sourdough baking. My manager was younger than me but had been coding since middle school and had already IPO'd once. I was in awe of everything, even the open floor plan. I told my parents I was going to change the world. I genuinely believed it. The project I was put on was building a new onboarding flow for enterprise customers. Nothing groundbreaking, but I dove into it like it was the most important software ever written. I learned the company stack: TypeScript, GraphQL, Kubernetes, and stayed late most nights to fix bugs and get PRs merged. I was too eager to notice that the senior devs rarely stayed past 5, or that my manager would disappear for hours at a time with vague mentions of strategy meetings. I felt useful, needed, like I was building something real. But that shine started to dull around month 6. I noticed that for all our sprint planning and retro meetings, no one ever actually used the retros to improve anything. We'd log our issues in Jira, and action items would quietly die in the backlog. The PMs were constantly shifting priorities, sometimes canceling features halfway through implementation. When I asked why, I got vague answers about aligning with leadership or customer feedback, even though we rarely talked to customers. Deadlines were arbitrary, and velocity was more about the number of story points completed than whether the product actually improved. It got worse when the company restructured. The startup we'd acquired 6 months prior was suddenly our future, and half the engineering org got reshuffled to support their products. I was one of the lucky ones, I guess. I kept my job, but I was now reporting to a new manager who clearly didn't care about our original roadmap. Meetings became more political. Suddenly, everything had to be run by VPs and SVPs and cross-functional steering groups. I started to feel like a line cook in a restaurant that only served committee-approved salads no one wanted to eat. Still, I kept my head down. That's what you do, right? Tech moves fast. Adapt or be replaced. But my motivation was starting to rot. I'd stare at Figma mockups for hours, unable to muster the energy to build a button that triggered yet another modal. I stopped contributing in meetings. I dreaded code reviews. I knew I was slipping, but I didn't know how to fix it. Then came the performance review. I walked into the Zoom call expecting a routine conversation. My metrics were solid, I thought. My code was clean, but my new manager opened with, "We've noticed some engagement concerns." That word, engagement, hit me like a gut punch. I sat there in stunned silence while he rattled off notes about my lack of visibility, slower ramp on new initiatives, and missed opportunities to lead. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "You threw me on a new team with no onboarding, ignored my feedback, and treated my work like duct tape." But I didn't say any of that. I nodded, took notes, and said thank you like a good little knowledge worker. After that, I started waking up with a pit in my stomach. I'd stare at my laptop, willing myself to open Slack, feeling like I was being watched, but also completely invisible. I couldn't shake the feeling that my career was slipping through my fingers, that I'd somehow failed at the one thing I thought I was good at. That meeting haunted me. It wasn't even a layoff or a firing. It was worse. It was quiet erosion. It was the company telling me, "We don't think you're one of us anymore." I stopped talking to friends about work. What could I say? That I was sad about not getting enough Jira tickets? That I hated every meeting and felt like an imposter for not enjoying a 6-figure job? I felt ashamed. Ungrateful, like I was betraying the dream. I'd worked so hard to get into tech, countless nights grinding leak code problems, whiteboarding practice, studying for interviews that felt more like IQ tests than job screenings. I had sacrificed so much just to be here, and now that I was here, I was empty. And I wasn't alone. In hushed DMs and walk-in talks, coworkers admitted the same things: burnout, disillusionment, a vague sense that everything we built was meaningless and that our impact was just a bullet point on some exec's slide deck. We talked about switching careers or going into tech-adjacent roles, whatever that meant. Some people left for Fayang, others went indie, a few just vanished. Then came the layoffs. Not mine, at least not yet, but hundreds of people across departments given 30 minutes notice, Slack accounts locked before they could even say goodbye. The mood turned funereal. No one trusted leadership, no one felt safe, and yet we kept showing up, clicking around Confluence, responding to Asana tasks, like good little tech workers. I started therapy around that time. I didn't even frame it as work stress at first. I just said I felt stuck. But the truth poured out soon enough. I told my therapist that I felt like a fraud, that my work had no purpose, that I was trapped in a system that rewarded output over insight, polish over substance, that I hated how every engineer talked like a mini CEO, obsessed with ownership and impact, but no one seemed to care whether any of it made the world better or worse. She asked me something that stopped me cold. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing? I didn't have an answer. I had never let myself think about that. I spent weeks wrestling with that question. I journaled. I deleted Twitter. I stopped checking blind. Slowly, painfully, I started to unravel the story I had told myself. That tech was the only smart path, the only secure choice, the only place where people like me belonged, that I was nothing without it. And then I remembered what got me into it in the first place. When I was 16, I built a website to help local small businesses during the recession. It was clunky, sure, but it worked. I remember the thrill of seeing real people use something I made, not because it was scalable or elegant, but because it helped. That feeling of usefulness, of care, was what mattered. I started looking at jobs outside the traditional tech bubble, nonprofits, civic tech, ed tech, even small indie dev shops with terrible websites but real missions. I knew the money wouldn't be the same, but I also knew I couldn't keep doing work that drained me dry just to pad someone else's stock portfolio. Eventually, I found a role at a public interest startup. Less salary, fewer perks, but a product I could actually believe in. The team was small, scrappy, sometimes chaotic, but we talked like humans. We disagreed without posturing. We shipped things that mattered, even if they weren't sexy. I'm not going to pretend everything's perfect now. I still wrestle with burnout. I still wonder if I've fallen behind my peers. And yeah, sometimes I miss the kombucha fridge, but I've also regained something I thought I lost, a sense of agency, of purpose, of self. I'm no longer just a tech worker. I'm a person who happens to work in tech, and that's a big difference. The industry sold us a dream. Change the world, disrupt, innovate, build. But what they didn't tell us was that behind the ping pong tables and IPOs is a machine that will chew you up, smile politely, and ask for more. That the same companies preaching psychological safety will gut you with a smile when the market shifts. That optimizing for engagement doesn't mean people care, it just means they click. It sucks to be a tech worker sometimes. Not because the work is hard, but because it's too easy to lose yourself in it. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your value isn't in your code commits. It's in your curiosity, your values, your ability to choose where and how you show up. The industry doesn't get to define you. You do.